Greetings and welcome to Office Hours with Dr. G. I'm your host, Dr. G, and I'm so glad you could keep our appointment. Well, tonight's guest has made the leap from audience to guest presenter.
Really?
Shine Day is a truth seeker, speaker, and spreader who honors being a mother, knowing that the condition of the mother is the condition of the child. She is a master builder and social reformer who began creative writing at the age of 7 and is heavily influenced by hip-hop, soul music, science, and mathematics. What a combination. Shine was resurrected into Moorish Science in 2018 when her husband's court case was dismissed after he challenged the jurisdiction of a Defacto venue in California. She credits her husband with shining his light and introducing her to knowledge of self. Shine is a mother of 3 sons and 1 daughter, 2 whom she birthed and 2 whom she inherited through matrimony. Shine has worked in various industries such as education, equity, public and private residential mental health treatment, public policy, and economic development, servicing children, youth, families, adults, those formerly incarcerated, and local organizations in Louisiana and California. Shine has aligned herself with the New Age Renaissance energy by being the innovator of Healing Truths, a digital center whose mission and vision is to heal through universal truths and principles. It is a space for collective healing and rising while respecting the individual expression of each being. Shine currently provides individual healing sessions, mental wellness workshops, creative consultation, and strategic planning and consultation in organizations of order and structure. Help me, if you will, welcome one of our very own to Office Hours with Dr. G officially, Shine Day.
Really?
You can rock a little bit.
Oh shit.
Yeah, that's me.
Welcome, my sister. Welcome back. We had a brief interaction on last Tuesday because I was going to do it by myself, and I kind of opened it up for anyone in the audience who might want to come on, and you volunteered, and it was like, darn, why didn't you do that earlier? So we decided to bring you back this week officially as my guest, and you're going to be talking about honoring the self. And I'm excited, and I'm hoping that your appearance is going to be encouraging to some of those of your other, colleagues out in the audience now who, like you, just tuned in every week and so forth, because a lot of us have something to share, and you don't have to have a big name somewhere in order to come on this platform. I pride myself in being not only a connector, but someone who I'm a promoter. I'm a pusher. I like to push people into their purpose. So welcome, my sister, to Office Hours on this side with Dr. J.
Thank you, Dr. G, and hello, everyone. I'm not looking at the chat, but I know y'all are out there. So, Dr. G, I communicated this to you prior to us going live, and I wanted to publicly apologize to you. So I had been outreaching to you and inquiring about being a guest, and because I did not hear back from you when I thought I should, I hopped in the chat and projected my insecurities. And so I want to apologize. I made a statement or a comment saying, you know what, I'll just accept that I'm not going to be a guest and I'll just support you by watching. But that was more so of a reflection of how I was feeling and not a direction or implication of anything you've done. So I apologize.
That the apology accepted. I know it can be frustrating, particularly sometimes even when some of you all have questions out there, and I don't get to either ask, acknowledge the question, or especially when Grand Chic is on, they're like, questions are coming rapid fire, and it's between questions and actual comments that are going on. So I'm doing like the two or three things at the same time. I'm hosting, I'm looking at the chat, I'm changing the little marquee that's running underneath. I'm doing all of that, and so I miss things. You know what I mean? And it's not intentional most of the time.
Right.
Most of the time, it's not intentional. Every now and then, I'll see something and I go, that does not apply to this, or this is not the the setting for me to bring that out, and so I don't. But most of the time, is when I don't. And since you're saying that, one of my pet peeves is when somebody will take the same question, copy it, and paste it like 10 times. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I mean, I know sometimes I know they know that I say that it rolls and it's gone sometimes, but 10 times, the same question, but they're like, say, hey, and you didn't do that. You didn't
Right.
do that. Yeah. But that's water under the bridge. I told you it wasn't necessary to make that a public apology, but I accept it nonetheless. And but I'm excited about what we're going to talk about, because you have a very interesting background, and it's diverse. Hip hop. What is it? Soul music, hip hop, soul music. What is it? What before mathematics? What is it?
Science and mathematics.
Science and they have STEM, but you have a little bit. You have a different thing. But hip hop, and you're a writer, so so we have something in common in that I'm a poet, or at least I call myself. I wrote a book of poetry, so I guess you could.
I have it.
Oh, thank you. So I hope So I hope it for some folks, it's inspirational. For others, there's a couple on there that they can. It was a journey. It was, if there was poems I started writing as far back as the 90s, and then as you could see my evolution in what I was writing. I was changing in my perspective. So yeah, but you are a creative writer. You are I don't know whether you're considered a healthcare professional. Is that mental health professional, or are you actually? I know you provide services with your own. I like to call things like ministry, and I'm not. When I say ministry, it's not like church ministry. When you're administering to the needs of others, and in your case, when people have, this is my opinion, when you're dealing with people with mental or emotional issues, that's a labor of love, and you have to minister to or administer whatever those clients need in order to bring healing. And I know you're talking about healing. Oh, yes, but healing from trauma, and so let's go back to. I like to start as far back as I can. So I think you said, was it at the age of 7? Were you okay? Talk about. Let us know who Shine is. And I don't know whether you were born in California or Louisiana. I know those are the two places that were mentioned in your bio, but are you not born in? But when you came through your mother's womb, were you? What area, territory were you?
Yeah, so the political jurisdiction is California.
Okay.
And I went to college in Louisiana and lived out there for 6 years before returning back home.
Okay. So
Yeah.
what part of Louisiana were you in?
I was in Grambling, Louisiana. So the name of the university is also the name of the town, and it's adjacent to Shreveport, Louisiana. It's near Arlington, Texas, and Dallas, Texas. And it's North Louisiana. And then in South Louisiana, you have what we call New Orleans, that city area. So I was in the north. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah.
And so did you grow up in a household that I'm pretty sure you mentioned that your husband shined that light on your knowledge, but before, when you were growing up, did you grow up in Christianity like most of us had been, or were you studying anything spiritual? I mean, did you have to make a leap or a change when you came into this knowledge of self?
That's a great question. And I can tell we're in tune on some level because that's what I wanted to kick us off with. So, I was born into a family where my mother's side, my maternal side, considered themselves or labeled themselves as Christians, and my father's side labeled themselves as Jehovah Witnesses. But my parents did not um, promote religious practices amongst me and my sisters. However, I, since I was born with two different religious perspectives from both sides of the family, it made me question this existence. So on one side, you have Christians stating that, we came from Adam and Eve and Jesus is our savior. And the images that I saw of Jesus didn't look like us. And so that story did not make sense. And then on my father's side, what was beautiful is that my father was very, or and is very attuned to nature. And so we would go on walks and he was always appreciating the sun or the moon and the stars and the sounds of the birds chirping. But I also questioned that religion because they didn't believe in certain things such as no celebration of birthdays and no celebration of certain holidays. And it was just limiting oneself from being able to express themselves fully. And so I just questioned everything. And another thing is I grew up in poverty. And so what that looked like, we were rich in other ways, but just economically poor. And I remember saying, well, I'm a pure soul and I'm kind. I keep praying for us to get a stable home and secure more finances. Why isn't God answering our prayers? And so that concept of who God was and is to Christians just never set right with me. And so that just caused me to constantly question and search for the meaning of life. And I was always expressive. I've always loved reading. My father used to read to me as a child. And when he would read certain books, he would mimic character sounds. And so that got me really engaged in reading. And I had a class assignment at 7 years old to read the I Have a Dream speech and be inspired enough to create my own dream speech. And it was my older sister who helped me formulate the speech. But I spoke about, I verbalized it and she wrote it. And then it was an opportunity for me to get up and recite it. And I remember just feeling very powerful. And so that was my beginning of one, questioning existence of life, because there was a conflict between these two religions. And then number two, feeling this fire, this energy when I was expressing and writing. And so, yeah.
So that's very interesting. A lot of times when two people come together in matrimony, and religion is a great divider, but if they were able to, they put that aside, obviously, in favor of a relationship. But sometimes, like you said, the children are caught in the middle. And I'm not sure how your other siblings, whether it affected them, but even the fact, I was just thinking as you were talking about your father taking you on walks through nature and talking about the various things and reading to you. And I was thinking about how many melanated children don't have the benefit of both their parents growing up, for whatever reasons. And, back in the day, and you're not that old, but back in the day, it was an encouragement not to have the father in the household, but I grew up with my mother and my stepfather. They married when I was just a month before I turned 3. So all my life, you might as well say, I had a 2-parent household. But I know that there were lots of households that the mother just, it was just the mother, and that was the way the system wanted it. As back then, of course, I didn't know. But then you find out later on that there were systems put in place to separate families and to make women dependent upon getting a check and getting the government cheese and the powdered milk and stuff, and sneaking daddy and whoever else others in and making sure that they didn't get seen. And so it was such a discouragement of coming together and making commitments. But the fact that your father, I'm smiling to myself because I love nature. And I used to do, once I stopped being a pastor, I started doing something called Nature Church. And I would go on Sundays we have a beautiful park it's been walking distance from where I am. And I would go on Sundays and I'd get to the river and a bunch of ducks would come to the river edge and they'd swim over to me and they would quack, and I'd go, choir's here, and they quack a bit, and then I would be on my phone and live on Facebook. And this is like 6 years ago, and I would be walking through the woods, like maybe 4 miles or more, and I would be talking about taking pictures and having these very inspirational little moments of inspiration that I was able to share with them. And then I was injured in 2017, so it was to both my legs. So it really, the walking part, was not as simple, but just being the fact that your father exposed you to nature. And that is what we as a people, if you go back to our essence, I think that's the reason why it feels so good when you do it is because it's more natural. You know what I mean? Everything we're doing now. I don't know who I was talking to, and they were no, I wasn't even talking to anybody. You just said something, and I don't know if I was talking to somebody else about this too. That some of the things that we get used to, and you said that you couldn't do holidays and celebrate various things, but a lot of the things that we have become indoctrinated in are things that, while they may feel good and we're used to them and we love them, aren't always necessarily the things that we did traditionally, and are not necessarily good for us when you think about it. It's just the same as like candy. If you never gave a child candy, would you be hurting that child? No, really. If you
Can't miss what you've never had, right?
Absolutely. But on the flip side of candy, what do you call it? Tooth decay, increased weight, the sugar, all of the things that, those things eventually can lead to. We don't know.
Addiction.
Yeah, addictions. And so we might bemoan the lack of being able to do these things, but we didn't always do those things. And we become used to, I mean, they're talking about grids going down, and they're talking about all this stuff that may or may not happen. And are you prepared? Do you have this stocked up? Are you going to be able to live with the land? And most of us can't, because we have been indoctrinated into a lifestyle, I think, has been given to us by those who have also the power to snatch it away. They said the Lord giveth. Now, I'm not talking about the Lord, who we thought the Lord was. But when you think about the Lord of the land, the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away at will. If they want to pull the internet where we wouldn't be able to do this again, what could we do? Because we didn't if we did create it, we forgot that we did. We had our own, I think, internet. We had our spiritual antenna. We could think of a person and get that message, an individual rather, get that message to whoever we wanted to, through thought and through the drums and the dance, the things that we did. And now we've become dependent on artificial things, you think?
Yeah. So what sparked for me is, in the event that there's a shutdown, a digital shutdown, that will give us an opportunity to reconnect to the electrical grid that's within all of us, that connects us to the divine mother, the universe. But I want to clarify something. And so I was describing my family dynamics in regard to religion, but in my personal household, we didn't practice Christianity or what Jehovah's Witnesses practice. Because I grew up in poverty and didn't have a stable home environment, there was no structure. And so my parents did not and could not implement any type of religious order, which actually worked out well for me. I did not grow up with both parents in the home, but I did have access to my father. And so when I was with him, yes, it was nature walks, but it was also me being exposed to him consuming alcohol to the point where he would pass out. And I was maybe 6 or 7 having to clean that up. Now, you asked, like, what is that connection? Why, it has to be a labor of love when you're in the healing field. Well, I believe it started there, just being a young child, not judging my father, but just wanting to help him and, placing cool towels over his face. But so witnessing that, growing up in poverty looked like bouncing around from wherever my mother could find a place for my sisters and I to lay our heads. And so I was in the primary care of my mother, but still had access to my father. And the beautiful thing about that was I was able to learn how to be adaptable and flexible and really observe every environment that I was in. And so my upbringing, once I began to start resolving it and healing it, is really my superpower. And it is what activated my pineal gland to see what I see and have a need to resolve injury. That's my overall mission, is using my knowledge, skills, and abilities, using what my mother sent me here for when I was constructed in her womb. Coming here to resolve injury and trauma, which we've all been victims or recipients of. You spoke about the Lord, but not in the religious indoctrination. But when you spoke of the Lord, for me, that speaks about the colonizers, those who are currently occupying our land, which is the greatest injury that we're experiencing. Our land occupation has been happening for centuries and has impacted us for generations. The beautiful thing is that there is now this reset and the tables are turning. However, because we're experiencing a collapse of mass destruction, there's going to be a need for universal healing because people are being hit with truth individually and collectively. And if we're going to survive this phase or this cycle, it's going to require us to heal. So that's why I'm here, to speak about resolving our injuries, our traumas, individually, collectively, as Moors. I don't know if anyone in the audience identifies being a Moor, but yeah, I'm here to resolve. So I hope I answered your question.
One of your greatest strengths, is motherhood, and you deal with honoring children. How does that play out in what you do in healing trauma when it comes, and how important is that in maybe reducing or negating altogether trauma, honoring the child?
Yeah, you hear it all the time that our children are our future, and the condition of the mother is the condition of the child. And it all starts in that construction of the soul of man, or Solomon's temple in that womb. So for me, what the value of honoring our children looks like this. Now, Dr. G, I want to ask for permission, although I typically don't ask for permission when I'm honoring my intuition, but I want to ask for permission. Can I be honest in this space? Is this a space to tell the truth?
By all means, please.
Okay, here we go. So, you promote the online school for Moorish children, and it was through the promotion that I was able to permit my 3 children to participate in the schooling. and they joined last year, 2020, in October. And I was so excited. One, because they were no longer being exposed to the philosophy of general education, which is docility training. So to make uh, us who went through that system docile. And so I was excited because what was promoted about the school was that it was rooted in Moorish science. And the curriculum was very pleasing. And so, yeah, I was just very excited. So we joined the school. And one of the things that I wanted to work on is to, before I make any complaints or give any feedback, I want to assess. So when my children first started, there was things that I did not like, but I was reserved because I wanted to ensure that what I was seeing was actually happening, and I wanted to be patient. But there was things that I did not like, and things such as the children being spoken down to, the children being scolded and molded for simply being children. The curriculum, the subject matter. My children were being asked to define civil rights. And I'm like, well, if this is a Moorish Science school, shouldn't our children be engaged in constitutional rights and have a foundation of the Constitution of Man and be grounded in basic fundamental civics? Why are they learning about the civil rights movement and the bus boycotts and Rosa Parks? And why are they being asked to watch a Harriet Tubman movie that is exposing them to physical slavery? If we know that the mind is all, or that the all is mind, and that this realm that we're living in is psychological, and we know that the attacks are psychological, why do we want to expose our children to that? If we know that the civil rights movement further propagated and contributed to our lost estates, why are our children learning about that? If we know that I, self-law, and master is the key, why are we not instilling that into our children? Now, I appreciated the schedule and the intent. There was subject matter on giving children terms to define and looking at the etymon or the root and looking at the parts of speech. You know, that was cool. I enjoyed that. But it felt like my children were being indoctrinated internally when they're participating in this school. But in the public, the school was being promoted as being an alternative and being rooted in the foundation of Moorish science. And that's not what I was witnessing or experiencing. And so,
well, I do. Before you go any further, I kind of am. Now that you're speaking, I'm a little bit familiar with, because now I'm a little bit familiar with that, and
okay.
I cannot speak for, everybody has what they want, how they think that, and I get some of those things are history, and some of those things may have been fabricated to bring in a mindset. So maybe perhaps they're not always things that we would want our children to know. But for the sake of my relationship, and I'm, so we're gonna both be honest. For the sake of my relationship with the founder of the school and so forth, I think that this is not for me the venue for that, because there are families that have their children enrolled in the school and they're very happy with that. And so to not, I have to be honest, and that has, because I had no idea, that was what was going to be said. But now that you're saying it, I do remember a conversation about a parent who was disgruntled about something, and that was probably you. Now that I'm hearing what you're saying, and I really and I'm going to be honest, um, I would like I don't want to have that discussion here. I don't think it's fair unless we had all three. I mean, the other party here. I just don't think it's fair. In all due respect. And we're going to continue, but I'd like,
Yeah.
yeah, but and because there's always, and I'm not saying that because I'm trying to cover up something, because people, you might like an apple pie and I may be more of a sweet potato pie. And so they put, I got sweet potato pie here, because it's not the apple that you don't like, that you like. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with the sweet potato. Maybe I may be saying something stupid, but what I'm saying is we all have the things that work and don't work. And I've heard a lot of good things from parents who thank me. And when they consider the alternative of keeping their children in the public school system versus where they are now, they're very, very grateful. But now, to go further with that, you did mention last week, and now I see where you're going, that you did start your own. You started to educate your children at home, which, if a parent can do that, I think is all the more um, a positive thing, because then you're able to, exactly what it is that you're giving them. If you have the background, and I don't know whether you developed a curriculum, or did you have to go through did you have to go back through the public school system to get something approved, or were you able to create your own and then they are approving it, or do they not approve it? We can talk about that. How did you go about creating what works for your children after
Yeah,
that situation?
that's a great question. And to clarify, my expression wasn't a condemnation of Daria Bay or Grand Chiefess Daria Bay. It was just me explaining that experience to say, having gone through that made me recognize the importance of valuing our children. For an example, and I'm going to answer a question about the curriculum that I developed. There's a theory, a analysis theory called the stages of development. And the theory states that there are 8 stages of development that we go through in this walk of life. And each stage presents a task or a challenge and conflict. And so I'm just going to state the 8 stages and then go from there. So stage 1, you're looking at trust versus mistrust. That occurs between ages birth to the first 18 months. And the task is for the infant to develop trust with their caregiver. The next stage, the second one, is autonomy versus shame and doubt. Initiative, which means competence, versus guilt, which is inferiority. And each stage comes with an age range. And I'll let you all research that age range. Then we have intimacy. No, you have identity, so feeling secure and a sense of self, versus role confusion, feeling lost, insecure, and unsure. The next stage, intimacy, which looks like forming meaningful relationships, versus isolation, which looks like being alone. The next stage is generativity. That means being able to generate or produce high energy output, versus stagnation, feeling disconnected and useless. So remember, each stage comes with a task and a challenge. And the last stage looks at integrity, so peace, wisdom, fulfillment, versus despair, which looks like bitterness and regret. And so it states that if parenting comes with challenges. Every parent, mother, father will experience challenge in that role, especially in the beginning, because it's a new role that you're being acclimated into. But parents who have factors such as financially stable, physically and mentally well, have great social connections, and who feel secure would be able to arise from the challenges of parenting, versus parents who have to worry about how to put food on the table, parents who are struggling physically and mentally, and parents who feel isolated is going to typically, and this is based on empirical data, so this is observation, typically will struggle to initiate that attachment and bond to the child because they're focused on how to meet those basic needs. And so a lot of the parents that were enrolled in the school fit the latter description. And I just thought that there would be a more understanding of the communal, the factors and the experiences of the parents. I thought that that would be taken into consideration and that there would be this collaboration and relationship between the grand shikas and the parents, and for her to understand the type of environment that the children were being reared in. And so, yeah, maybe I had high expectations, and I know that there were parents that did or that do appreciate that learning environment, but I didn't. And my experience really. Okay.
But me.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We're still going where I kind of was taking us out of that.
Okay. So,
in all fairness, I mean, I get it, but I'm not going there.
Okay.
And that's in love. Not on this platform, unless I wouldn't mind having her and you on here at the same time, and that's fair.
Okay, that would be beautiful.
And she is my friend beyond that. So, and I'm still trying to just be fair. You see what I mean? And I know her heart with regard to the children, and I know and I'll say this, that one of the things that happened after she was on the show the last time that was very, very uplifting for her is the number of teachers, because they needed more teachers, and the number who stepped up to be a part of the teaching staff to give that, take some of that burden off of just a handful to give more. So, again, like I said, in all fairness, I don't want to do that without her being here. And I don't want to, my show is not going to be the one that is the cause for the people that it's doing good for, and those that will see and consider this. I'm not going to let this be the platform that created a rift that didn't need to be made public like that because of one person's dissatisfaction, which may be very valid and legitimate. Okay. So I'm not discounting your dissatisfaction. I'm saying it could be isolated unless it's broader and everybody, I start getting if I have an advertiser, let me just say it. And I I've gotten some complaints about some things that people offered and it didn't, they weren't happy about it. So you don't see them on here, or it wasn't even, in one case, it was just because somebody did something so public that it was very negative. I had to take them off my platform as as advertising. I get that. You know what I mean? I just think that this is something that needed, however you handled it. Hopefully it was to your satisfaction, and it led to you creating what you needed to further your children's erudition and their training. And I think that that's fine. That's wonderful, because you got so many other things that that we need to talk about, and I want to go there. Like I said, I'm Dr. G. I'm the same person. I know it's three sides to every story. Yours, mine, and the truth. You know what I mean? Yeah. That's how I look at things. Like, we have to meet somewhere in the middle, but we need everybody here in order to do that. If you can, we can. Absolutely. Yes. So, but I was gracious in my approach, Dr. G. Just so you'll know, I was very gracious in my correspondence. This is not to tear down. It was via email, but yes. But that experience morphed into me creating a curriculum. So I had created a curriculum prior to, but it was very broad, and it was just based on the fact that, okay, here's a pandemic. My children are not being allowed to go to school, but they still need to be engaged in learning. And so I created, I'm a visionary, or maybe you all don't know, but I consider myself to be a visionary, and I wanted to meet the learning needs of my children. And so I created a curriculum. And then I come across. What are their age ranges? your
So the youngest is 2 and the oldest is 7.
okay, so they're quite
Yeah,
young.
but so the two 6-year olds and the 7-year-old were enrolled in the online Moorish school.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So now you're
So that
teaching.
didn't work out, and so but that's what I'm saying. There's always a duality. It was not a condemnation, and because I stand in honor, I just wanted to express what sparked me to really focus in and concentrate on developing the children of our nation. That was it. It was not a condemnation. It was, and it's just a duality. Although that environment didn't work, the beautiful thing is that it motivated me and their father to be consistent with engaging in their learning. The curriculum at the online Moorish school empowered me and motivated me to be specific about the types of subject matter that our children should be engaging in. And so, you know, everyone has a nervous system. And just for the parents out there, we really have to be conscious of how we allow our children to process their emotions. So a lot of times what I've witnessed, and I have done it too, even with all of the knowledge that I've acquired. But when our children are crying or having a fit or a tantrum, we have to allow them to do so. We have to allow them to cry. They have a nervous system that has to be regulated. And if they're crying, then that means there's this dysregulation. Our children have voices. I grew up in a household where I heard stay in a child's place. We have to value the mind and the fearlessness and the less or uncontamination of energy that our children possess, because our children will one day be leading the nation. And if that is something that we truly believe in, everyone who say that they practice Moorish science or that they, honor the culture of cosmology and astrology, and that we're all energetic beings, like what if our children, if that was instilled in them now, instead of having to discover who they are and their birthright well into adulthood? Imagine if they were rooted and grounded in that now. And so for me, that is the importance of valuing our children, valuing their light. If the condition of the mother is the condition of the child, then that means the mother has to be holistic. That means the mother has to know who she is. A woman or a mother can either build up her house or tear it down. And so in my profession or throughout my career trajectory, like I said, everyone who was seeking mental remedy, their disruption stemmed from a childhood event or experience that was unresolved. And so if we could limit the injury and the traumatic experiences, and we can lessen the exposure, then just imagine the type of force and power that we'll be putting out into the world if we address the needs of our children today. And so that's one of the
I
topics.
think it's important because, even we can't even say certain things, but what our children are going through right now with the current situation that we are going through for the last almost 2 years. And now the children are in the crosshairs to undergo what the adults know a lot of adults know is not good. And so, we need to protect them in more ways than what we thought we needed to protect them from. Because there is an enemy that may be seemingly invisible, but what it does ultimately to our children is something I feel right now that parents really need to be on top of, certainly. And you know what I'm talking about, because to do that to children, for instance,
to patent their DNA.
Yeah. So to change them into something that, to do what it does, And I'm, like I said, I'm being ginger about it and careful about it, only because certain things you can't say without your things being flagged. And even if they put it in the chat, it's still an issue. So I don't want anybody to put in the issue, but I'm saying it is an issue when I see images of children, and ours in particular, being subjected to that. And I'm thinking, what are the parents thinking? What's on the minds of the parents? And is it necessary? I mean, no, it's not necessary. I've never heard them say that children couldn't go to school without that. Now they're doing it to folks for jobs, but children, and they've never said, and the children need to have that in order for them to attend school in person. So why are parents doing that? Except they've been, brainwashed into thinking that they're protecting them, and they're actually sacrificing them. Mm-hmm. So, there's a lot in terms of, honoring our children. Like right now, it's like, how much do you value the life of your children? I just read about a 17-year-old who, after that second one, is gone now. So those are just as important. And I'm not negating what you said earlier, but that's important to me right now. On the forefront is what they're forcing on children. And I would hope that, and no parent in the chat or who watches this would even consider that for their children. If they're Moors, they should know better. But there are parents that they're sleeping Moors, unconscious Moors, that are actually subjecting their children to that.
Right, which why we should emphasize the condition of the mother is the condition of the child, just simply meaning what the psychological condition of the parent, the mother, the father, is what the conditions of that child would be. So if the parent is unaware that the opposition is trying to get into the crystal stream and patent the DNA, if the parent is unaware of that, then the child was going to be harmed. If you have a conscious parent, mother, father, who is more aware and who is not going to be injected, then the child will not be injected. So if we're a reflection of one another, and the mother or the father is responsible for that, the well-being or the development in the foundation of a child, then where was I going with this? I lost my train of thought. If the condition of the child relies on the condition of the parent, then the parent has to be conscious. And I just wanted to emphasize that. So yes, there's a lot of wars. The main war that everyone is speaking about is the opposition trying to get into our crystal stream and alter our DNA, and not only alter it, but patent it. And so it is unfortunate that our baby's energetic code or light is now being altered simply because the parent is unaware.
Well, it's out there. The truth is out there. And I just noticed, I was looking at radio, something on that popped up, and I was like, oh, mainstream is reporting this stuff, but they're still downplaying the numbers. But it's a lot more than what we think. Now, you talk about restoring, one of the things you wanted to discuss was restoring the balance and harmony of mother and son, males. How does one do that? Because there are a lot of times, there are single mothers, parents raising sons and so forth. What has put us off balance, in your opinion?
Yeah.
Balance.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of ways to answer that question. I can speak about colonial operations or colonial occupations or the fall of the Moors, or, because what we're experiencing is just continuations of the same war. But if we want to speak in more modern terms, I think the two genders or the energies of the two genders have accepted that the imbalance between us is normal. Number two, when we look at historical context, I'll just speak about Los Angeles simply because I did the research. I'll take us back to the 70s. So in 1970s, 70s, maybe mid 1970s in Los Angeles, there was a collapse in the economic infrastructure when over 300 manufacturing jobs uprooted to overseas. So Los Angeles, South Central lost its industry, its economic industry, over 300 manufacturing jobs. So people are unemployed. Also in the 70s, you have the media promoting movies such as Superfly. So engineering in the son's mind or the male's mind that being a pimp and having multiple women is a cool thing, being fly. So you have those two things going on: the media portrayal of who we are and the economy collapsing. Then in the 80s, you have the birth of the underground economy, which was the crack cocaine trade epidemic. So you had people who were massively employed, drugs come in. You had two things, two alternatives. People began to start selling these drugs to support themselves and their families financially, or you had people using drugs to suppress and medicate the stressors of poverty. This is very general. Then in the 90s, you had mass incarceration. It's something called Operation Hammer. Everyone should look it up. And before I get into that, I spoke about the 70s. What was messed up is there was something called the Second Great Migration, when you had a lot of families from the South migrate to places like Los Angeles in hopes of an economic opportunity due to Executive Order 8801 or 8802, signed by Frederick D. Roosevelt. So that happened, which is why a lot of families migrated to LA. They came out for this opportunity, then the jobs uproot, then the drugs come in, and then you have this concentrated surplus. So what are we going to do with this surplus? Oh, we're going to build prisons. And then we had the separation of families via mass incarceration and via the foster care system. You mentioned how there were policies where women had to make a choice over, do I want the father in the home or do I want to receive government assistance? Mm-hmm. Well, what was really disheartening is the policies that were set in place to begin with. So in order for the government to resolve the issue of an economic collapse, they said, well, if you want us to take care of you and be your daddy, then the father can't be in the home. So what is a mother going to do? So when you say, why do I think there's an imbalance? I just think about all of the attacks for centuries and generations that has been inflicted upon our families. I hear my master teacher, one of my master teachers, says that if the opposition, and we can call the opposition Rome, we can call the opposition our de facto government, but the narrative or the staple for the opposition is if they can subjugate the woman, then they have her son. Sure. And so I think we've accepted this imbalance instead of trying to get to the root cause and address the root causes of this destruction of our families and this destruction of the balance between woman and her son, or male and female. And the fact that, I always hear sisters say, we're God and we're so powerful. Well, we're also the cure. We have a womb. Our womb is governed by the moon. There's laws of nature that we should be governed by. And if we don't know that, then this is the simulation that we're in today. Woman not knowing herself. Sons are out here hurting, and it seems like I've seen a lot of sisters rejoice in the hurt of Asiatic males or our Asiatic sons. And for an example, there's a lot of men who are being accused and convicted of sexually violating young women. I don't have to get into names. I don't want to get into names because you hear it very commonly. So the masses, when the commentary revolving cases such as that, I hear my sisters think that the victory or the justice in a case like that is for the male to become state property. So it's like we've been contaminated psychologically. We have accepted the destruction, and we overall lack knowledge of self. And so that has to be restored. That has to be healed, and that has to be addressed. The male sons further the bloodline. If woman was in harmony with nature and in tune with herself, then she could actually birth the champions into this world to fix a lot of these problems that we see today. Anything you want to say, Dr. G?
No, I mean, no, I mean, basically, I was thinking in terms of what you just said about what you didn't talk about. You didn't mention anyone, but I guess I wanted to ask you a question about that. When, in regards to those kinds of situations where we just went through with, one particular singing person, individual that was very well known, is very well known, I see two faults there. I see the system that created him to be that way, or supported, I want to say supported that, and maybe even fostered it, that type of behavior. But I still think that it's a mental and a criminal issue. And in cases like that, if it's proven to be true, then something has to be done. I do agree that too often women push men into the state property system for petty things, and then they're lost, and now they become, this is the new, as they say, Jim Crow. And a lot of industry, I personally believe, I feel, went into, maybe not in the 70s that you spoke of, but a lot of industry that we think is overseas went, what I call underground, into the prison system. And that there are thousands of our people and brown folks and others that are working in these industries right behind prison walls. And we think stuff is getting, everything went to China. Well, a lot of stuff is happening right here, because they are the slave labor. They are the ones that have been taught how to, do widgets and whatever. And even though they're trying to crash the system now and take everything away from us, they still created an industry behind those bars. And those men, and in some cases women, were getting pennies for things that then came out here, and they charged us, an arm and two legs for. So, and I think that that's part of the hidden part of what they've done. When we know they have to allegedly have to work, but then we don't realize they actually literally put industry behind bars and then I heard that our VP, or not our, the VP, didn't want to let men out in California because it was going to take away from the industry, those that were working behind those bars. Do you know anything about that? That it was going to reduce the number of workers that were incarcerated. Were you aware of that?
I'm sorry, I had some interruption just now. Was I aware that
our the VP, when they were over there as the AG or whatever they were, failed to release? There were numbers that could have been released, but was concerned that it was going to take away from sort of like the industry that I'm talking about that's behind those bars. So she'd rather keep them in there, folks that really should have been released. thousands and thousands that should have come out. But see, the industry's going on behind there, and that's what
Yeah,
a lot of people don't know.
yeah. Private prisons is just like everything else. It's all an industry. It's all a way to make money off of bonds or to secure bonds. You know, if we're all considered British subjects and we're dealing with the reversion of a state or the lack of a reversion of the state, then the people that own this corporation is going to make moves that's in the best interest of the corporation, which is why private prisons, state prisons too, have become a revenue stream. And this is why our sons and our daughters, or the suns and the moon, are currently locked up in cages, because they're not viewed as human beings. They're viewed as bonds or pieces of paper, or property and chattel. And so that has to be resolved. So I have 4 children, 2 of them that I birthed, the other 2 that I inherited from my matrimony. The father of my first son, prior to me meeting him, he had did 14 years in prison. So he went to prison at the age of 14, got out at 28, and he and I met. And I was very green when I met him. I thought like, oh, he did 14 years in prison, and now he's out and he's working and life is good. But it was my experience in that short-lived relationship where it opened my eyes to the psychological damage that happens to a being that spent most of their lives in prison. So I say that to say, I had a child with him, and maybe 2 years after us having a child, he went back to prison. We were not together when he was in prison. But when I was explaining to my son, that your biological father is in prison, he wanted to know why. And that's the beautiful thing about children. They are so curious to learn, and they have so many questions, and they have a pure soul if not contaminated or violated. And so, I don't have all the answers, but my children do allow me to think critically. And so he said, why is he in prison? And the duality, right? What I explained to him was he's in prison for 2 reasons. One is because the police wants the light of the sun. Because I tell all 3 of my sons that they are suns, and they compose the electrical energy of the sun. So therefore they are suns. So the police want the light of the sun, and also because your father does not know the law of the land. And so, I think that's what we see. We see that Rome are these policy enforcers, and I hear Grant Sheet speak about prisons being the exchequers chambers. Exchequers chambers.
Yeah.
And so, yes, we know that they want the light of the being, but we also know that we fill up the prisons because we don't know the laws of the land. And so I think that there's a duality, but I also know there's resolve that needs to happen. And the way that we resolve that is being accountable, knowing knowledge of self, knowing who the enemy is, and then also honoring the laws of nature. We're in this new age. I hear you speak about it all the time, which is why I like watching not only House of Reawakening Minds on Fridays with the civic lessons, but also these office hours with Dr. G, because you have a host of different guests that speaks about the metaphysical science of Moorish Science, which is metaphysics. And so we're in this new age. And the beauty of this new age is that it is a reset. And the beautiful thing about it being a reset is that now we're in a space to acquire the knowledge to really kill the beast that has been governing and ruling over us for centuries.
I agree with you, and then I also lately have been seeing things somewhat differently, because I know that a lot of those that are so-called fighting on the patriot side or something, I don't feel that they're fighting for us, for Moors. When I say, there are a handful of Moors involved in whatever, but for the most part, like Brand Sheik says, that they're at a point now where they're feeling the sting, where before it was just us feeling, I call it just us, just us. But now it's knocking on their doors, the lack of jobs, the lack of income, the lack of security, even the loss of life, because some of them are succumbing to the things that we're all being subjected to. But I'm not so sure. I was looking at, I don't know if anybody has seen that new, and I don't want to do a spoiler alert, but if anyone's seen that movie Eternals, the Eternals that just came out, Marvel has a new movie called The Eternals, and they're always in those movies telling on them, they have to put it, they say they have to tell the truth, so they hide it in movies, they hide it in what seems like fiction, so forth. But one point, and without saying it all, there's a good side and a good side and a bad side, and the good side's supposed to be watching over humanity and watching but not interfering in the affairs of men, while they are fighting the evil side that would seek to destroy men. And it turns out at some point, the so-called good ones find out that the same one that created them created the deviant side. So, and it was, they thought one was protecting humanity against the evil, and when it was all culminating to something where they would just destroy everything. And so I started seeing things different, because just like with the wars and the various things, they say the folks with the so-called purse strings, they fund both sides of the war. They don't care. They're the cause and the cure. They we know that in the last 24 months or so, we've seen, the cause pop up with, we got the cure. And so it made me question things that I thought were sort of black and white, so to speak. It's either this or that. It's so gray, because you don't know. You know what I mean? When I say you don't know who really is who. May look like you, may have the attributes and the language, and may have it, but may not be. May be working on the other side. May be working for your destruction. And so I'm at a place now, with what is it that's in me, that's been in me from time in immemorial, that I need to bring back up in me. Where is my eternal superpower? I need to bring that to bear. And I think that's what we need to do, is know that we're not just flesh and bone and blood, but there's a soulish aspect of us that is eternal, but must save itself, must see itself, or see things for how they really are, and stop buying the narrative, the programming and all of the things that we've been told, because the one that made the good made the bad too, and win-win for them. But how do we win? I think it's a personal thing. One has to say to herself, how do I win? And when I'm saying that, not to the disregard of everyone else, but each one has to have that survival. I will survive. I will overcome and rise above whatever it is that they throw at me. And I think too many of us, and you may or may not agree, we're always trying to put that responsibility in the hands of someone else. We've been given that savior mentality. We've been indoctrinated with, a savior's going to come, but it's already in you. It's just that you got to find it. You got to be, I worked in the prison as a volunteer for almost 10 years. And so I know what you were alluding to, that, there is a psychological change. There is a, 9 times out of 10 recidivism is, and you work with the incarcerated, is high because they become indoctrinated in the 3 hots and a cot. Things get tough out there. Some of them would even do things just, not enough to get a life sentence, but hey, I'm going in for the winter. You know what I mean? And I would see sons and fathers in there because I was a pastoral counselor and I preached there. So I would, I was there 3 times a week. So I know I saw that, and it was sad because they didn't realize. And then when they came home, they didn't know how to perform as a free person, a free being rather. They get on their bed and they want to stay in the room and they wait for somebody to tell them you could take a shower. Or I had one gentleman that we let come and live with us, and he had been in and out for over like 25, 30 years. He was indoctrinated, and 2 years out, he's back in. You know what I mean? Because for them, it has become their shelter, their safety, their safe place. And so we do have to help heal our sons. And when they come back, how do you love them back into society? Into normalcy, into the fold of what's normal.
Mm-hmm.
How do you heal that?
Yeah, and I agree with you. We're not on opposite sides, although I may have seemingly taken a jab at your friend, which is not my intention. But Dr. G, we're vibing. Listen.
No, I'm not even there anymore.
Okay, perfect. Because I was feeling something, and I'm like,
no, I'm not there anymore. I moved on.
Okay, well, that's great to know. Yeah, how do we heal that? I agree with you. Healing starts with self. I mentioned when I was on your live stream last week that when I worked in public and private residential mental health treatment, that I saw the hustle of the insurance game, where there's also another hustle. A person is charged for 4 weeks of treatment, which is what they consider a cycle. So I think, well, from my observation, people enter treatment depending on the clinician, therapist, doctor to fix them and to heal them, not recognizing that the healing is within and that clinician is only responsible for guiding the process. Number 2, so in order to maximize someone's treatment plan, I've witnessed clinicians intentionally feed people treatment services so that they will have to continue more cycles. But that's because people enter treatment being dependent on someone to fix them. Number 2, I've also realized that when I was meeting with a lot of clients, the way that somebody is assessed and then diagnosed with a mental health diagnosis is a book called the DSM-5. It has a list of criteria for every mental health label or diagnosis, but it's very general. And a lot of clients were telling me, these medications are making me worse. I'm actually worse off now than I was prior to taking them. So I say that to say that I think the way that these structures and systems are built comes from a foundation of dependency, making someone depend on the institution to resolve the injury when there needs to be a promotion of the being resolving the injury. So when brothers and sisters come home from prison, I do believe that programs are great at stabilizing the needs of those who were formerly incarcerated. But the reason why we see recidivism is because in prison, it's not really about rehabilitation. And I know this, one, having worked in public policy with those who were formerly incarcerated, and then hearing the experiences of those who were formerly incarcerated. They're not being rehabilitated. And then the question that we have to ask, what conditions are they coming home to? Well, if they're not being connected to critical services that are going to stabilize them and give them some basic skills, then, and they're coming home to poverty conditions. And when you're poor, you're more prone to take risks to survive, which is why our sons and daughters end up being back incarcerated in the system. And so I think what it takes is for us on the outside is to start building our own infrastructure to aid the needs of our brothers and sisters who are coming home from a psychological war machine, because that's what prison is. It's not to rehabilitate. And there's this narrative that poor folks are inherently bad and violent. No, it's the conditions in which these people are living in. When you're poor, you're more prone to take risks, which is why the infrastructure in these communities, you have a lot of check cashing places. You have people signing up for payday loans, working all week, signing up for a paycheck loan, and then ending up in debt. And now, there's massive fast food joints, because when you're stressed, you're trying to medicate those stressors. And sometimes, a lot of times, food makes us feel good. When you're more prone to take risk and you're in an environment where you're constantly having to struggle to survive, it makes sense why you would be willing to rob and kill your neighbor if it meant your life over theirs. And so what can we do? We need to acknowledge that there is a war going on. We need to humble ourselves. We need to take responsibility. And that starts with healing oneself. And once you heal yourself, then you're in a position to begin to open up your mind to receive those universal downloads, or to receive what your mother sent you here for, to start bringing the remedy that we all are seeking here on earth. So yes, Dr. G, it starts with self, but it also is going to require a collective consciousness to rebel and resolve, and to stand in honor and confront and not retreat, and recognize that, yeah, we're in a war and it ain't pretty right now.
Go ahead. You're right. No, I was going to say, you're right. You're talking about the war. So when the veterans or soldiers come home, they have the PTSD diagnosis, and nobody thinks about those who are coming out of a prison. That is just as traumatic as any war zone, like you said, any going on some, and that's more contained. You got men and women that are being, abused by the other fellow inmates, so to speak. You got them being abused by guards and COs, and different things happening, and subjected to things, and that's traumatic. You got folks can't go to sleep because they're not sure if something's going to happen to them when they close their eyes, or even when they're in a passing in the hall. So you've got a lot of stressors there, and I think just as much emphasis needs to be for PTSD, and the trauma of being in prison should be directed towards the men and women who are coming home, as they have for those coming out of any other war zone.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't want to promote this oppression of Olympics, because we've all been injured. That's what trauma means. It means an injury. It's an event or an experience that dysregulates our nervous system. So we've all been traumatized, individually, maybe within our family. And I know this, I don't speak out of arrogance. I'm just speaking off of all of the life experiences that I've had, whether that was in my profession or just within the relationships that I've developed privately. I have a question for you, Dr. G.
Sure.
Another component to healing, especially when I think about how broken our families are, which, was by design and is by design. When I think about that disruption or destruction, I think that we have to resolve conflict. And that when it comes to our families, the love is there, but we lack communication. So my question to you, if you feel comfortable with sharing, um, have you experienced an injury in your childhood that you did not communicate as a child? You didn't share it with anyone. You kept it in.
I'm trying to think. I mean, and when you say child, you mean like I was under the age of say 10 or 12 or something, little child, or just not 18, not an adult?
Let's say we can do the first 7 years. Let's say the first 12 years.
There's nothing that really comes to mind in my first 12 years that I would say was traumatic that I hit. I had I even though, like I said, I grew up in a household with a lot of folks at my grandmom's house, folks coming, going, coming, and things happening, playing cards, going upstairs, doing whatever they were doing. I was sheltered from it, so I didn't know that that's what was going on. And I never had a dirty old uncle or anything. Nothing happened to me that I wasn't abused at home. So I didn't have anything. I got a little older and some things happened. But in those formative years, I didn't have, but I did have psychological things happen during that time.
Injury.
Right. So
it doesn't always have to be physical.
Yeah, I grew up having what do you call it? We would go what we call to the country, and I was allergic to like the grasses at that time. Things would break me out, and as a little child, my legs, would get what they call impetigo. You probably see IMPET. It's called impetigo or impetigo. So I would get scars from the, having the breakouts of going to the country in the summer. And I had a psychological issue that I didn't really realize I had until something else triggered, and I ended up in a place where I was sitting in counseling, and I realized how much it hurt me that my mother would put, and this sounds stupid to somebody, anklet socks on me, pretty little socks. I've got pictures, little socks that went around the ankles with little ruffles around it, and how I wanted to bring them up to my knees, but they could only come up a little bit further than my ankles. And my mother didn't know how much it bothered me to show my legs. Now, when I grew up, it kind of, things wear away. But as a child, I was so self-conscious, and so it hurt me so bad but I couldn't tell anybody because they didn't know. Oh, it's just a scar. But it stuck with me till I was an adult, and I was actually literally in a counseling session, and I went all the way back to that, how traumatic that was. But it seems silly now. But at the time, it took me back to something that I, as a maybe 5-6-year-old, that I was dealing with that no one understood. It was body shaming or whatever, but it was painful. But I was fortunate not to have to deal with the ones that grow up and somebody's molesting them or things like that. I have no recollection of any of those types of traumas. So, and for me, I'm that was a fortunate thing because it happened to a lot of people. I found out later on, but I didn't have that happen to me.
And what if you said you kept that a secret? Were there other family secrets that you had to suppress growing up, or for you it was like Pleasantville in your household?
I want to say it was Pleasantville for me because we were poor too, but I didn't know it because my mother cleaned people's houses and did all this. She never let me know that I was poor. So we had a house and we had all this, but we were poor, and but nothing went on that I knew about. I found out now at 66, sitting there talking to my 86, 7-year-old uncle, things that happened in my family tree, and I'm like, what? But I recorded him. I got my phone and sat there with him about 5-6 months ago and just let my uncle talk because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know our family history. I didn't know why they said things like, my grandfather was raised by the white people. We said white people. I was like, I used to think, why did white people raise my my grandfather? And do we have a name that belonged to the white people? This is my growing up. And I knew my great grandmother. How come she was still around? Turns out my grandmother was 11 when she had my father, my grandfather. When she had my great grandmother rather was 11 when she had my grandfather, and they took him and put him in an orphanage. Hence the white people. That was that was the word. But my uncle had to tell me that, and he found the family like maybe when he got to be 16. But I never knew. I never knew that part. And now for my great grandmother, that was trauma. Your stepfather rapes you and you get pregnant. And you're like 10 and then 11 you give birth. I didn't know.
Would you say that foundation? Have you ever heard of the term cellular memory?
I have.
So although you have, you don't have any direct traumatic experiences outside of psychological and feelings of shame and insecurity, would you say the foundation of your grandfather being reared by Albion, would you say that had an indirect traumatic impact on your parents or the way that they reared you? And then being that you question, like many of us, well, let me speak for me. You stated that you had this questioning of who you were and where did you come from. So did you have feelings of being lost and not sure of yourself because of a lack of self-awareness?
Well, there was like a disconnect slightly in my mind because up until talking to my uncle, I thought that my surname came from the Albions that raised my grandfather, but it turns out that he had the name of my grandmother. That was her last name, and then by the time I came along, she had married because that happened when she was 11. But the name that he had, that my mother had me, before she wasn't married, and so I ended up with that last surname, with that surname. So I was thinking, and then I used to see, because my surname is Dyer, and I used to see the guy Wayne Dyer, the guy he did all those motivational things. And I was thinking, do I have those people's name? Well, we know we do have their names, but I thought that maybe he was named by whoever it was that raised him, even though I didn't know it was an orphanage that he was in. It wasn't just like a family. No family took him. He was in an orphanage until he became of age, and then he came back. So, but I did feel like, who should I really have been, or something like that for a while. Yeah, I did. But like I said, when you talk about cellular memory, my grandmother, transitioned at the age of 33. And my mother was only 7 when her mother transitioned. And so I dealt with not knowing that my mother, for years after I got older, saw me. Why did she treat me like I was the mother? And then I realized that she felt that I was her mother had returned. And so my mother had an issue, a fear. I wouldn't say an issue. She thought I was going to live past 33 because that's when her mother left. And so when I got to be 34, it was sort of like, ta-da, and I used to question sometimes, who's a mother, you or me? And then I realized later on that my mother, and people had told her, if she's like, does anybody have pictures of my mother? And blah, blah, blah. They would say, you want to know what your mother looked like? Look at your daughter. Just your mother was, fairer skin, but there's your mother. And so my mother held on to this mom had come back through me, and I was one hearing it. That's not where my head was back then. I got older and I realized we do come back. And so I understood the trauma that my mom suffered and the why she treated me, always came to me for advice, because she didn't get a chance to do that with her mother. She's only 7.
Mm-hmm. Did you feel responsible for her growing up?
Well, I felt like my mother was immature. I just felt like my mother looked to me like she put. I wanted to be able to go, mommy. Not that I couldn't. Don't make any mistake. But there was very serious things that I felt she should have handled. Been able to handle. But yet she looked to me then I realized why, but it was way, was 50 or 49 or 50 when I realized how she saw me. And so, I didn't mess, I just understood. I understood. And I've since seen it in others. As I do meditation and I do, regression in past life. I don't do it on purpose, but I've had regressions that happen during meditations. And I've had two people, mother and daughter, who I did not know, Albions. And I saw them in the Reiki as mother and daughter in a previous life, but reversed. And I didn't know them. And so when I asked them about, do you ever feel like she's the mother and you're the daughter? The daughter started crying like, oh my God, yes. And because they had switch roles. So I know it happens. But then when my mother was going through it, I didn't even embrace the thought because I was still churched up. You know what I mean? We won and done. We don't come back.
Can we switch gears?
Sure.
We're speaking about trauma and injury, and it's still in alignment with the topics that I gave you to speak about.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout my journey, I've come across stories of people having a lot of trauma related to the church, whether that be violations happening to them from people in positions of authority in the church, whether feeling judged by church members because they don't fit in the narrative of what a church goer or worshiper should be. And you said you were a pastor for 13 years?
10 years. I was in ministry for 25, but the last 10 as a pastor.
Okay. Can you share with me and those who are listening the type of trauma that was experienced in the church, just from your experience, if any? For me, I think a key trauma in the church is the dogma of the sermon, and how that can create trauma because you grow up your whole life believing in this deity or believing in God outside of yourself. And then you're being hit with this reckoning that, wow, God is within. And this blue-eyed, long, I don't even want to speak about the
blonde hair, blue eyes.
Yeah, blonde hair, blue eyes being that we've been told is our savior. You recognize that it's not. And so for me, that's an injury there. That you've been lied to your whole life and you've been praying for salvation or praying for remedy to something and someone that doesn't exist in the way that you've been engineered to believe, and then also having to accept that the only cure or the only savior is yourself, is being christened and coming into the light. And so, for me, finding out that Santa Claus was fake was traumatic to me because, I grew up believing in one thing and having to find out that Santa Claus wasn't true. But that's something minor, as opposed to people who are now, having to recognize that this God image and definition doesn't exist in the way that we were reared to believe. So can you speak to that? Like, do you feel any, or have you ever had any remorse having been a pastor and how having unknowingly propagated the gospel to your members? If you did, I don't know.
Of course, I have regrets because I was a very good pastor, and so therefore, no, I was. I could say that honestly. I was a very good pastor, and I sincerely cared about those who were part of the ministry. And when I realized I had led them, I had allowed myself to be led astray and had led them astray, attempted to come and bring them the truth and correct it, had taught them too well. Then they thought something had happened to me. there's something was wrong with me. And so it when we broke those ties, it was painful because they were like my children. So my, like I said, I counseled in prison. I'd married, did weddings and funeralized and counseled and just was there. We were, we loved each other. And so when I came with truth, that created a rift. And now many of them, I mean, they follow me on Facebook. I call them eavesdropping, but they just want to see. They've been waiting to see, if I was going to meet my doom and destruction for turning away from what they feel was the truth. But yeah, I do have regrets because the ones I could reach, I reached, and they are few that consider themselves woke. And the ones that I couldn't, I stopped being regretful after a few years. I realized that was the course we both had to take, and that and at a point our paths went in different ways. But in the very beginning, when they rejected me and called me all kinds of things, demons, and I was doing this and God's gonna get her and all that, of course you feel it. But trauma, before I even got to the pastoral side, I realized that there was a lot of men and women behind the pulpit that were not what they appeared to be to the public. And I vowed that I would not be like that. And I had actually had experience of seeing the other side of who people we revered really were. But it didn't stop me at that time from going into when I felt I had a call to it, because I wasn't going to do what they did. And fortunately, I didn't. But what I did do was I still kept an open mind, and I questioned a lot of things. It's just that I didn't, I got good grades on my test when I was studying for my doctorate, and I didn't believe half the stuff that I submitted. When you had to do, dissertations and things like that. I did it, but I questioned things. And then when this big old, out of body experience happened, and I was on another show, and the brother said to me, he said, "You really had an abduction." And I didn't think about it that way. I was sitting in the chair, but I went out of my body, and when I came back in, service was over, and they had been calling me up to the front, and I was a changed person. My life has been absolutely I've been on the mission of reawakening minds ever since December 18th, 2010. And that's when it happened. So I realized that instead of being regretful, that I had to go that way because I know what they're going through over there. And now I no longer force it. I used to want everybody to get this truth. Get this truth. That's not where I am anymore. I got to get this truth. I got to live this truth more than get it. I got to live it, live it, live it. And those who get, to get a whiff of what I'm doing, if they want to know more, I tell them. But I don't force. At the beginning, you want to force where you are on people. They got to get it. And then I realized, no, it's not my place. It's not my place to be. Just to be an example of what it is that I hope others will see. And that's how I've been going for the last maybe 8 of the 10 years. Because the first 2, I was trying to get people. I wanted everybody to think like me. And it doesn't happen like that. People will leave you. And they need to, because they'll hold you back.
What made you trust the truth that had been revealed to you? I mean, to walk away from a ministry or institution that you gave years of your life to, and then you have this reawakening or this revelation. And what was it that made it so truthful that you were willing to walk away from what you had built?
I just knew it was like we used to say, you have a witness on the inside. And at some point, there was an option thrown at me internally. And the option was, you could always go and say, I don't know what happened. Pray for Apostle Gilly. I was a coordinated apostle. Pray for me. I'll sit down for 2 or 3 months and put I had 22 in my ministerial staff, so somebody else could preach. I had that option. It came in my head. You could always say, look, and they'll love you after you admit that you're crazy for a minute. And the other side of me said, you're not crazy. You're walking in the truth that you always knew was there. Now we're giving it to you. And so when I said yes to the truth, I was given many mega opportunities. Downloads came. We just have to be open. Once you're open to truth, truth will find you. You know what I mean? And there is an inward witness to what's true versus what, the fake stuff. Like they say, is it live or is it Memorex? And I began to feel and know in my being that I was on the right path. And I didn't know where I was going, Sister Shine. I didn't know where I was going, but I know where I wasn't going to go back to. I had no idea, and I just trusted the process that I was now being led into another level of something. And one day I heard a couple of maybe 6 months in, you're the reawakened minds. And then like, okay, how am I going to do that? I didn't know anything about social media platforms. I was Facebook. We were just coming out of MySpace, you know what I mean, into Facebook. And, but we weren't doing, live this or that. You could put your information out there. So I had no idea how I was going to do these things, but I just trusted that I was being led in the right direction. And I'm not going to tell you or anybody listening that it didn't get scary, because I'd been in this stuff for a long time, but I knew it was time to get out. And I had to consider myself privileged to have escaped. I didn't even know at that point what I just felt like I had been pulled out of something that would have meant my destruction eventually.
Mm-hmm. Because all masks are off right now.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Looks like
look, we switched this around. You interviewing me.
No. Oh, yeah. It just comes so naturally. It's just a part of my assessment. We're having a conversation, and I wanted it to be interactive. But although, and you may never experience trauma as a child, or maybe you have and you just suppress those experiences, maybe or maybe not.
Possibly.
But to those who are listening and those who will be listening, when you think about how to honor yourself, you honor yourself by being true to yourself. There's a saying like, you can lie to everyone, but not God, or to thy own self be true. So the way you honor yourself, the way to be honorable is by walking in truth, standing in the truth, and being truthful. A lot of people that I've worked with, whether I was servicing them or they were coworkers, the way that they showed up in life was a direct reflection of an unresolved wound or an unresolved injury. And so a self-reflective question that you all could start processing is, what have you been carrying with you? Because whatever we carry with us, we project out into the world. That's the energy we begin to lead with. And if you want to be a receiver of love and light and peace and joy, then you have to be a giver of that. And if you're unable to give the very things that you want, then you have to start going within and asking yourself, what have I been carrying with me? What is preventing me from rising and being whole? Why do I feel like I'm going through the same cycle over and over again? There's a cliche statement that insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. We tend to say that we want change and we want peace and we want to heal, but our actions don't reflect that. And so a question for everyone is just start processing, what have you been carrying with you? Because what we carry with us and whatever we harbor on begins to birth something called intrusive thoughts. And intrusive thoughts begin to exacerbate mental health issues such as anxiety and depression, and then heavy indulgence in drugs and alcohol, and looks like indulging in impulsive behaviors. So I want you all to research something called intrusive thoughts, which are really thoughts that are stuck in your mind that causes distress and creates impulses. I also want to say, Dr. G read in my bio that it was this new age Renaissance era that caused me to create what I refer to as healing truth centers. What birthed that concept was because I had came to a point. I was working in public policy, similar to you, Dr. G, but I was only working in public policy for 2 years. And that's when I started to see that the de facto government creates the problems, the very problems that they're trying to resolve. And I remember being at an organization around Congress and council members, local municipal government, state officials, federal officials. And the narrative is, as long as we can make people feel like they've won, then we've done our job. In private, they also refer to themselves as actors. Anything that is presented to you by your so-called representative is read from a script. And similar to you, I when I started to see the truth and recognize that, I was participating in it, and that was just because of my lack of being vocal about it. I ensured that the needs of those that I was servicing, the needs were being met, but I still wasn't being authentic or genuine because I knew the corporation that I was working for was not rooted in truth. And so, like I said, I walked away from a salary because I wasn't going to no longer continue the puppet master show. And so this concept of healing truth came about. I've been working for the past 15 years, and these corporations have made millions upon millions of dollars off of my intellectual property. And so if I'm securing these government funds and these government contracts for these corporations, that's only giving me a small percentage of the money that they're being given to operate the programs that I'm managing and directing, then I can do it for myself. And so that's where Healing Truth Centers, that's how it came to be. I offer services in the realm of individual therapy sessions, doing consultation and creative design, business plan structure, consultation in organizational structure and order. Everything that I've done to bring these corporations millions of dollars, I'm now just doing it for myself and offering it to the people at an affordable cost. So my prices range from $29 to $49. And everything that deals with healing self or healing the nation, that's what Healing Truth Centers offers. It's all centered and focused on healing. I have a YouTube channel, and that goal and that vision is to bring on guests who have gone through traumatic experiences, but were brave and courageous enough to begin the journey of healing those experiences. And I believe that when we're courageous and brave to share our truth, then we give people the power to do the same. And so I interview people. If anyone's interested in connecting with me to receive services, to receive creative direction. A lot of people have a lot of great ideas, but they lack the process or the ability to create a framework and blueprint to begin operating that thought that they have. So I'm very great at that. And yeah, anything you want to say, Dr. G?
No, I'll put your YouTube and your IG up.
And these are 4 questions that those who are listening can start to process on. If you want to begin that journey or that step in healing, here are 4 steps. You have to identify and name your pain. You have to discover and know who you are. You have to have a willingness to learn and grow and to show up and be who you authentically are. And you have to love yourself. Self-love is key. How you treat yourself will be a reflection of how others treat you. And once you love yourself, then you give others permission to do the same. And so the purpose of me for asking Dr. G if I can share her platform was to really express the need for us to heal, and repair our families. Like I said, the love is there, but not necessarily the communication. There's so many family secrets that are keeping families from rising and being powerful, simply because there's an unwillingness to be uncomfortable and have these conversations that cause the disruption in the first place. I want to see a balance between the male and the female energies. And I want us to start valuing our children. And so if we focused on those elements, and I truthfully believe we can start really, really, really restoring our nation. It all starts with self.
That's awesome. From a standpoint, I mean, you talk about do you do workshops? I don't know whether do you do group workshops or Zoom workshops or things like that, where you bring, say, either women together or women and men. It doesn't matter. I mean, do you do that type of? Do you have a mailing list? Once they go to your site, can they sign up for mailing list or something where they can reach out to you? Or because you didn't give me an email. I would have put your email, and ideally, if people could email you, they may want to.
Yeah, so I put up my web address, which is www.healingtruthcenter.com. It's going to redirect.
Truths with an S.
With an S, yeah. It's going to redirect you to the Quicksilver website. I am a wealth ambassador. So not only do I collect silver, I also sell it, courtesy of Dr. G for promoting that opportunity. So yeah, it'll redirect you there, and it has all of my contact information. And the way that the workshops are designed is based on the need of the participants. So I'm in the process of really building out the blueprint and infrastructure of the web design, so the services could be more accessible and more marketable. Right now, if you just have an interest or you just want to follow up on anything that you heard me share today, you can email me, and you get my email by going to the website that Dr. G has listed up.
Well, let me see if there are any. I do apologize to you all for not seeing if there was any questions. I just got kind of engrossed in the. Let me see. Family secrets. I just want to see if there might be any questions. I think this has been a good exchange.
Do you? Because if I'm being honest, I feel like there was a disconnect in the beginning. I know you said that you were over it, but I'm trying to read the room, and it doesn't feel as wholesome as I thought it would feel. But
no, okay. I'm listening. I'm listening. No, I've told you. If I tell you I walk away from something or I'm away from something, I'm away. And if I'm still stuck there, then you would know it. But I was gone from there. That's just how and don't. I'm not telling you that it's easy, but I can do it, and that's what I did. So okay, I can do that, and I wanted to have this exchange and this interaction, and now, as far as I'm concerned, I love what you were sharing. We the information, especially the trauma information. Like you said, so many are dealing while I did not have any, I don't have any secrets that I can remember, trauma-based secrets. I had things that happened that were there. I was abused as as a wife. I was married 3 times, and I was abused 2 of those times. So those are trauma, but they just weren't childhood traumas. You know what I mean? But there was, but people are hearing this, and I think that it's going to make some of us think, what have I not dealt with?
Mhm. And when we think of childhood traumas, like I said, it doesn't have to be a direct experience of like physical or sexual abuse. Maybe you didn't receive the attention that you wanted, and so that lack of attention morphed and developed into the type of relationships that you seek with friends or partners. And so maybe one can say, I had a perfect childhood, or not perfect, it was very pleasant, things went well, and it wasn't until I got older that the trauma started to take place. But
And that was my story. That's my
mhm,
story. You were asking
mhm,
about childhood, but
mhm.
I got horror stories in adulthood. So I'm serious. So, and I'm my first marriage, I was 18 years old, and I married a man that every time I got a beating, I realized that he was beating his mother. It was
Yeah.
it was he was beating his mother. It was, and I treated him, I must have, I did for him the things that his mother probably wasn't able to do as a single parent, and all that, and the thing that made it traumatic. But every whack, the cut with the razor, everything, the punch in the mouth, when I was pregnant, everything, I was his mother being beat. And I realized that. You know what I mean? And that was traumatic, but I just wasn't a child. I
Mhm,
was just,
mhm,
I was a naive young adult.
mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, I've come across that as well, which is why I was emphasizing the restoration or the balance and harmony between the male and female principle. Because throughout my journey, I realized that a lot of brothers had a disruption of their relationship with their mothers, which informs the way that they showed up in relationships with women as they got older. So all they were seeing were their mothers. And if the relationship wasn't whole or healthy, then that's how they would display themselves in the relationship with women, seeing the women as their mothers. And the same thing with women. Yeah.
Well, this
But
has
yeah.
been, yes, what this has been a wonderful. I know someone said that, well, we can go over a few minutes. I'm going to ask you this last question because someone in the audience wanted to know how your husband was instrumental in bringing you to not into this knowledge of self. That'll be our last.
Oh yeah. Okay, so in 2018, he caught a whack charge, criminal charge that was just very minor. And his process of fighting that case is what resurrected me into Moorish Science. He would what he would do to prepare himself for these inferior court hearings was watching YouTube videos on jurisdiction. And there were videos featuring Grand Sheikh Taj Sharif Bey, Sabir Bey, and just other people. And in the beginning, I thought he was crazy. Like, you're gonna represent yourself? Wait, you you're going to challenge the jurisdiction? What is jurisdiction? And I thought he was crazy because I never heard of Moorish science. I never knew what a Moor was. I didn't know about birthright and pedigree and estate. I didn't know about anything. I didn't know my bloodline. I didn't know my nationality. But I will never forget. It was the day before his first um, hearing in court,
It's
and he was studying. He was watching YouTube videos, and I just started to listen to the terms that were being shared, and it just started to make sense. And at the time, I was working in public policy, and so I'm watching him go through this process for a year straight. He's very intelligent, And, a high school diploma doesn't measure one's smartness, but he didn't have a traditional high school diploma. He had some college experience, but the fact that he believed, or not even believed, he had this knowing that the knowledge of jurisdiction or challenging jurisdiction was what was going to get his case dismissed. Like, he had faith in it, he had power, like he believed in it, and he was walking in that truth. And it was me watching that process that reawakened me and opened my eyes. And, he's like, where's the delegation of authority? Or if this is a criminal case, where's the injured party? And he's going back and forth in the California court venue, or de facto court venue. And the case was dismissed. He walked away with nothing. And that's all I needed. That was all I needed to see. And I've been on this path to liberation and restoration of estates ever since. And then, working in public policy and seeing all of the schisms, and knowing that you have, knowing the operations on Fleet Street, England, and knowing that you have the Circle Church in the Chancery, the Bishopric of Rome, the Queen of England, and the Pope of Rome. And these are like an organized body of criminals that have been occupying our land. And so the lights just came on, and I've been here ever since, Dr. G, instilling the truth in my children, teaching them the principles of love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. And just walking in that truth. So,
well, thank you. That's amazing. And, the proof is in, when he was able to do that. I mean, it's nothing like proof. Hard, you saw what his study resulted in. And when you can do that, because a lot of folks don't have that witness, they hear about somebody saying you can do it, but they don't know anyone who has, So that is good. Listen, I want to thank you again for coming on the show. I'm going to run this other little banner, which I forgot to run, which says, I don't know where it is. I think I said that. Oh, here it is. To be a guest. To be a guest on the show, just like our sister Shine 9 has done. You can reach out to me, and there's the information. I want to thank you all for your attentiveness, and again, thank Shine. Please reach out to her for her services. She's very reasonable. I was shocked with the prices that you gave, but reach out and get some help with whatever you're trying to do, your business, or get your affairs in order and so forth. Our sister here is going to take all of that she was given to the public sector, and now she's private. She's doing her thing to help herself and her own, so we can benefit from everything. And I know how that was. I was in corporate America for 27 years. No, I wasn't. I was in corporate America for 40 plus years, 27 in the last place. And so I know exactly what you're saying. Just being a director of something, and you can't really make any decisions. You're like a figurehead. You're the housing director, but you got the mayor who can tell you what to do, who doesn't understand housing. So, you know how that goes. You always got somebody up your back, manipulating. So I get it. I get what made you frustrated. But again, thank you so much. Reach out, and we'll get you back again. And keep watching, please.
I will.
Keep watching, and you all keep coming back. All right. Somebody said, get a seer back. I will. I need some more. I need new people like I had our sister Shine today. I'm looking for you all. I'm looking for you all to come and be, on the other side of this camera, just like Sister Shine did. If you really feel that you have something that you want to legitimately share, because some of you share so much in the chat, they be going on. So I want to say, and you know what? You're the second. You're the second one who was a regular viewer that was on the show. So I'm excited that there are some more out there, maybe not like you, Oh yeah, see, she got her silver thing going. And
Yeah,
right,
y'all sign up for some silver. And Dr. G, can I just add this? The
yes,
planet Mercury, another name for the planet Mercury is Quicksilver. So,
Quicksilver. Yeah,
yeah, it's all
Quicksilver.
connected.
There's a sigil for Quicksilver, and I actually found an ancient sigil that somebody shared with me, and then I found the sigil book, and I found the sigil, and I made the sigil for Quicksilver. It's a little interesting. I put it on like some of my T-shirts and stuff, and nobody's like, "What is that thing?" It means Quicksilver. So when you when you use those sigils, and you see that, then you're attracting to yourself. And right now, there's a special going on that if you would, sign up under Shine and get some silver and the challenge kit. It's $10 off the challenge kit, and that special's going on, right?
Yes, I know. Which is why my prices for services are marked the way that they are. Just as long as I can buy me 1 ounce of silver, I'm good.
Yeah, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. All right, y'all. I'm trying to go to bed. I'm trying to go to bed while it's still this day. I go to bed so late. And you're gonna know when I get sleep, because she's shrinking. The reason why I'm not shrinking is because I'm gonna sleep on time. So when I start losing weight, you're gonna say she must be getting to bed by 11 p.m. So thank you so much. And yes, so we are going to go, and I'll see you hopefully y'all next week. Same channel, same station. And I'm having some problems over here, so if you hear me clicking around, I don't know what this little funny thing is popping up, but I'm going to get it out of the way if I can. There we go. All right. Shine, you have a grand evening. I know it's early over there where you are, but over here it's 10:07. All right. All right. Peace, 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 peace. I can't look. This thing won't let. Oh, where'd you go? She's gone, y'all. All right, y'all. I don't know what happened. I'm having some problems with this, but thank you so much. And I don't think it's gonna let me put my brand up. Here it is. I'm going. I'm having technical difficulties, but we are going to leave. Thank you so much, each and every one of you. All right. Dr. G. Really? Who's she?
Yeah, that's me.
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 Dr. G. Really?
Who's she?
Yeah, that's me.